my writing. So I wrote this novel for two very important reasons. One, it was cathartic. I needed to somehow make sense of this disease. I needed to think about a child, because by then I was an adult and I had no help as a child. So I wanted to write about hope, and my book ends with hope in recovery. And the second reason I wrote it was hopefully that other people would use this book. I thought about it for guidance counselors. I'm a teacher in both K through 12. I pictured it in a guidance center office where they could use it. We make choices every day. And you're going to see in this book that the voice of a friend is what literally altered the character's life and mine later on when someone introduced me to the way life could be. So I want you to think for a minute about one of your closest friends and how much it helped you, right? And C's best friend, Mo, is like any fifth grader. She's very fickle. But when C, it's short for Cicely, meets Sarah, she gets help and support through Al-Anon. So I'm going to go to page 59. You see, you write that down, 59, even though you have a Post-it note up here with it. And I'm going to read a little bit from this book, too. I think we're okay on time. C felt at ease around Sarah, who listened to what she had to say. But the best thing about Sarah was that she loved to read as much as C did. They took turns asking each other what books they enjoyed the most. Pippi Longstocking, Little Women, Black Beauty, Cheaper by the Dozen, and The Giving Tree by Silverstein. The list was so long. But C and Mo talked about their favorite TV shows like The Twilight Zone and Dick Van Dyke. And Mo didn't really like to read like C did. Both C and Sarah shared a love of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Sarah's favorite character was Francie, because she noted the symbolism of the tree. The tree came back to life. It's like her family. They survived despite so many problems. She was surprised. She found herself talking nonstop to Sarah about her dad's drinking. So how are things with your dad now? Well, I feel like I need to talk with someone. I'm so angry at my mom. Why your mom? He just puts up with his drinking. I want to tell her to tell him to stop. These eyes met with the scales course, and she was embarrassed. I want my mother to leave him, but he'll never do that. He'll never ask. I'm embarrassed. You don't need to be embarrassed around me, Sarah said. My mother almost died from embarrassment too, but she learned that what he did, her father, wasn't his fault. Weren't you embarrassed? I was at first, but the first thing they teach you in Al-Anon is how to focus on your own life, not the crazy one who is drinking. How is that possible? She pulled her shoulders back. My mother and I and my whole family, we just focus on my dad. I hate it. I feel trapped. It's like being on a merry-go-round. We go around and around in circles and nobody knows how to stop. And I'm frozen on the pony and I can't get off. So I chose to end this novel with hope. And as I said, my goal was to have it reach an audience just like the other book. I can't help it. I'm a teacher for all my life. I'm didactic and perfect. I even wrote the themes and the study questions in the back of the book. I was ready for them, right? But my goal was for people to just enjoy it, because I hope they're also good stories, not just something painful. So the top themes of this book are: you always have a choice. I still have that written on a Post-it note from a guidance counselor when I worried about what would happen to me. And he said, you always have a choice. And the second theme is your family. doesn't define who you are. I've already lived longer than both of my parents. And the third and most appropriate theme today, lasting friendships are invaluable and worth all the time that you give them, which we've heard on many stages today. Yes. And again, some friends are best to let go of. My novels are for sale today at the ridiculous, wonderful price of $10 cash that you would purchase one. And I have a bio there with my email. If you do want to reach me or get in touch with me, please do so. I love it when people write to me and tell me how they think or feel. So I want to turn it over now. I think have I run down my 20 minutes? How much do I have, Fred?
About 10 seconds.
I know that you're from my lovely friend, Marjory Lyons.
Just a couple announcements and a brief introduction of Marjory. Thank you so much, Lisa. Both novels sound very interesting indeed. Later today, a lesser-known author, Michael Frank, will be speaking at the Hall of Philosophy on his VLSC selection, 100 Saturdays. Next week, if you're interested in a writing course, there are two with next week's theme of games. One aspect of games, maybe especially if you win, is joy. And Lauren, just double checking the name, Graff, will be teaching the joy of discovery in prose, and January Gill O'Neill, love that name, January Gill, will be teaching a poetry class, teaching you to lean into joy. Let's get to our next writer, Marjory Diane Lyons, PhD, founder and president of Telling Your Story, LLC, has more than 30 years of experience as an educator, author, and publisher, writing books of life stories for private clients. A former college professor, Marjory held writing workshops nationwide on memoir writing until COVID struck. Subsequently, she began to hold writing workshops on Zoom, which she continues today. In 2018, Marjory co-wrote 2 books in the Think You Can't Write series on the craft of writing. Her memoir, Goodbye Volvo, about donating her husband's car to church, won first place in the Florida competition of the National League of American Pen Women. At Chautauqua, Marjory taught memoir writing in 2014, and she spoke on telling your own story in words and pictures at the Chautauqua Women's Club in 2019. Her talk in 2021 at the Smith Library resulted in standing room only for her dramatization of the book, The Voice in the Vote. She is a proud graduate of this VLSC class of 2022. Last spring, she was inspired to write and publish today's book, The Remarkable Friendship of the 4 Girls' College Years and Beyond, 1946 to 2022, rather. I give you Marjory Lyons.
Thank you. Oh, Lisa, your books are so wonderful. I hope you sell them out. She really has the child's voice. If you notice, if you're a reader, as I am, sometimes people think they're writing in a children's voice and they're not. Lisa does. So it's authentic. It's a very engrossing story. And that's because I've read them and I enjoy them and I love you and you're a great writer. I want to talk with you about the remarkable friendship of the 4 girls, college years and beyond. And as Fred said, 1946, yes, to 2022. So if you're doing arithmetic, don't tell me what your answer is. Just try to guess how old I am. The remarkable friendship is about 4 girls, Jane, Elise, Smitty, and me, Marge. We entered New York State College for Teachers in 1946, but we called it SUNY Albany. Sometimes we just call it state. So we don't have a great name for it, but now it's called University of Albany. And when I've spoken with the president of the University of Albany, Dr. Javidan Rodriguez, he's always pleased that I refer to the old time school that the 1940s story talks about. The reason I want to talk with you today is that I wrote this story because I had to write it. We four girls were in the habit of making phone calls, sending birthday cards, greetings, Christmas greetings, and so forth. In January and December 2021, I got no message from Jane whatsoever. She lives in Portland, Oregon. And I was really worried. You know, when you don't hear from somebody, you worry. And then January, I received a letter from Jane's daughter, Anne Parsons, telling me that Jane had passed away in the fall. And that Jane really wanted me to be informed of her death because she was thinking of me in those final days of her life. I was very touched, so I am having a little trouble here this morning, remembering the 75 years we had been friends, Jane and I. So I called Anne, her daughter, and I said how wonderful to hear your voice. And we spoke for a moment. And then she said, well, you four girls had a remarkable friendship. You met in college and you stayed friends for years. And I thought, she just gave me the title of a book. As writers, you look for titles. And I was reflecting on what that conversation had been about, what Anne and I had talked about. And I thought, it really was a remarkable friendship. It still is, those of us who are still here. And I reflected on the scenes and the conversations and the images floating through my mind, combined with the pictures and the artifacts that I have kept all these years. The picture of our senior ball, the commencement program, the baccalaureate program, and so forth, all the stuff that I had collected over those years. And I thought about what Anne said, and it was a remarkable friendship. And I was the writer in the group, and I knew I needed to write the book. And the time to start in was right then. And so I started in February to write the book. I wrote it very fast. Those of you who are writers will find this amazing that you would go so fast, and I did it, but I was in a hurry to do it. Anne, the daughter, was not well. Elise, one of the girls, was not well. I was anxious to get the book to them before it was too late. And so we begin the story in 1946 when my mother and I took the Long Island Railroad starting in Port Jefferson, New York, to go through to Penn Station and for me to learn how to take the shuttle over to Grand Central and up to Albany, where I would be going to college at SUNY Albany and living with my aunt and uncle, Aunt Happy and Uncle Marvin, my mother's sister, Aunt Happy. So as we took off in the train, I could see the Hudson River beside me or out the window, and I had butterflies in my stomach because I was excited about going to school and learning more, reading more books. I guess like you, probably wanted to read every book I ever laid my hands on. Anyway, I got to Albany and began to make plans to attend Frost Camp. I had received an invitation to Frost Camp in the summer of 1946. I knew it was some kind of a camp, but I had never been to camp. I wanted to go, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I wanted to find out. I was a little nervous about that. We drove over to the campus of Albany, and there were a couple of buses lined up with a class of 1950 emblazoned across the windows. So I knew that that was the right place for me to be. And our colors were blue and white, and the girls who were the directors of the Frost Camp that week were wearing blue and white t-shirts. I climbed on board the bus. And as we got to Burns Lake to begin our weekend there, the first person I met was Jane. And Jane was a very pretty girl, beautiful big blue eyes, and she smiled a lot. And I liked that, and we became friends right away. I said, Jane, I come from a little town. And she said, I do too. and then she said, Marge, do you like dogs? I said, well, yeah, I do. It's a good thing because it turned out she had a Doberman Pinscher whose name was Judy, who was a big dog, but was very friendly, and we got along really well. So Jane and I sat there in the lodge at the picnic table, and along came a girl and said, I'd like to sit down with you, may I? I said, here, my name is Elise DeSeb. I come from Troy, New York. And Jane said, sure, I'm from North Chatham, New York. And I said, well, I'm Marge Lyons. I'm from Long Island, but I'm going to be living with my aunt and uncle and commuting into college. And just then Elise said, oh, there's Smitty over there, Barbara Smitty. Can we bring her over to sit with us? We got enough room. So we girls, 17 years old, pushed over, moved our things away. And the four of us lined up on that picnic table on that day. I'm going to be emotional again because it was a historic moment for us. It was the beginning of our friendship, which was remarkable. There we were, four of us innocent little girls, which I describe in my book, the innocence of the time of the 40s, while the war was still going and almost over, and the response that the public had to that. What happened at Frost Camp was that it was very cold at Burden Lake. I was not used to that. I was from way down south in Long Island. So when it was time to go to bed that night, the girls opened up their sleeping bags. Elise and Smitty climbed into their bags right away. And Jane opened up a very huge sleeping bag. I'd never seen one so big in my life. And she said, well, Marge, I put my Canadian blanket on the floor, cold floor, and my pillow. And I had put my pajamas on, and I was ready. I thought, well, this is it. She said, Marge, you're going to freeze to death there. I've got a great big sleeping bag here. You want to crawl in with me? And in a flash, you know what I said? Yes, I do. And I popped right in there. And in a minute, both of us were sound asleep. That was the beginning of our friendship. It was also the beginning of many overnights that we four girls had spent with one another. Sometimes, never again in the sleeping bag, I might add, but in bona fide beds and cots and things here and there. We slept at one of those homes frequently. I have one thing that I would like to read to you about an overnight that we spent at Aunt Happy's house, which I call the bloody haircut. The bloody haircut. One time, the four of us girls decided we wanted to spend the weekend together at my house, Aunt Happy's house. We giggled and talked and played records and sprawled out on the carpet in the living room. At bedtime, still laughing at the fun of being together, we put on our long granny gowns and slippers. Jane sat down on one of the beds saying, who's going to sleep where? Each of the girls had spent the night with me alone. Now we four were going to share, two to a cot. But wait, Elise said, addressing all of us, don't you have to brush their hair or put it up in curlers? Elise's blonde hair in a chic style was cut very short, molded to the shape of her head. It did not need a thing to improve it. Barbara started rolling up her long brown hair in cotton socks. The thought was, she said, I just brushed mine 100 times, Jane told us, starting to brush her light brown hair, counting 1, 2, 3. Elise turned to me, Marge, you always talk about wanting me to give you a haircut. I know the latest style called the blunt cut. How about tonight, she asked. Okay, I said, smiling. My hair is so curly that you can't hurt it. We paraded to the bathroom. I stood near the sink. Jane and Barbara, maybe Barbara, crowded into the doorway. In came Elise with her zippered cosmetics case. She took out a razor blade and holding it very carefully, said to me, Now look at me. I will do a razor cut, the latest style. Lean over the sink to keep your hair from falling on the floor. She picked up my bangs and with a good grip on a razor blade, took a swipe. I let out a yelp and pulled away, putting my hand over the spot. When I took it away and looked, yeah, I found blood. Grabbed the towel. Smitty Barber ran to the bedroom and came back with Band-Aids. Jane cried, "Oh, Marge, does it hurt?" And Elise said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Marge." I put a Band-Aid on. The bleeding stopped. We all sneaked past Aunt Happy's bedroom without waiting for her. Crawled into the two beds, and the four of us fell asleep without further discussion. But for the giggles, we smothered by our blankets. True story. All these stories about tell are true stories. It's great fun. Well, time went on. We went to classes together. We had lunches together. We went a Cornell weekend party together with Jane and Jerry, who is to become her husband. We had a wonderful time going to school, studying in the library, obeying ourselves, hoping to obey what we were expected to do, which was to proceed further and get a 4-year college degree and become teachers. Commencement occurred in 1950, 1950, I almost gave me a little more time. Commencement 1950 was held in the Palace Theater in Albany, New York at 9:30 a.m. in the morning. I guess it was the biggest place they could find for the graduates to fit in there. Anyway, I remember singing in the baccalaureate service the Sunday before. I remember singing, "Oh God, our help in ages past." I always sang second soprano. Every time I hear that song, I'm right there, standing there with the other girls singing at that baccalaureate in 1950. So then we had the after years. We got married. We were all in each other's weddings. I was the last one to marry of the four. And when it was my turn, of course, I was married on Long Island, and everybody else was up in Albany, and nobody traveled the way we do today in just a flash. So people did not afford to come down to Long Island. Instead, they sent the dresses that we had made to appear in Jane's wedding. They sent these dotted, embroidered eyelet twist dresses down to my mother, and she was so happy to get all these bridesmaids dresses. Took them all apart, and we went over to Corinne Bravoli in Stony Brook, New York, who was a French seamstress, and she laid all the material out and cut out my dress for my wedding with a burqa made in nylon, and of course the ballerina length that we wore in the 50s. Anyway, that was what happened with the wedding that we were all in one another's weddings. As I said, they did not come, but their dresses came to my wedding. The husbands, the boys got jobs, and we had to follow them to wherever their work would be. So there was moving around. We had babies, at least 3 of us did, and that took another lot of work to get used to having children and enjoying that. So time went on. We stayed in touch with phone calls, cards, and so forth. My family bought an inn in Vermont, and that inn became another stopping place for us because it was near Kinderhook, where Smitty lived. And of course, I was up there all the time. So 3 of them came to my 80th birthday at the inn, and 2 came to the 85th birthday, which was at Fireman Frank's home in Cavendish, Vermont, where we were surprised to find that the beds were box beds with my too. And here, Barbara Smitty and I, aged 85 and 86 then, so I'm under the mattress at the lower level of the bunk bed and had a good time and celebrating my 85th birthday. The most precious thing to me is the home visit. I visited Jane in Portland, and we talked about teaching. She and I were the ones who taught kindergarten and first grade. And we talked about Anne, her daughter, who was the one who wrote the letter to tell me that we had lost Jane. I stayed with Smitty very often in Kinderhook, and Smitty was always the one who couldn't get a date. We were always getting blind dates for her, until one time Frank walked in, and Frank and Smitty fell in love right away, and they were married for 64 years. We often laughed about that. And then I visited Elise in Washington, D.C. so many times. We talked about many things, including the sad marriages that she had had. So I want to end on one story that brings a happy note to the remarkable friendship. It's the story of Elise and the phone call. It's called Elise Gets a Phone Call. Then one day in about 2011, I was in Washington with Elise after her husband, Ross Brown, had died. When the phone rang, she said, "Oh, I need to take this call upstairs, Marge." And up she went on the archy, curving stairway to the second floor. "I guess you know who that was," she said on her return to our companionable spot in the well-appointed living room. I looked at her. It was Irv. "Irv?" I asked, knowing the answer, wanting the answer, praying that it would be the answer that I wanted it to be. And she said, "Who else do we know named Irv?" "Well, Irv." Her voice had a special tone of excitement. She said, "His wife passed away a few weeks ago, and Irv is coming to see me in Washington on Tuesday." Marge, I don't know how to plan. I could tell she was thrilled, and so was I, knowing their history. "Will you help me?" "We should." "Away with those long flannel nightgowns," I said. All those old photographs of your life with Ross. She looked at me startled. "And take down those notes on your refrigerator with doctors' names and with hospitals." I knew the wondrous love story of Elise and Irv. They met at State in 1946 in science classes, and soon found they wanted to be together to date and explore their budding love. Irv wanted to take Elise to his fraternity for a party at the Jewish frat. The boys only dated Jewish girls, and they would have objected. However, Elise couldn't attend the party at Irv's frat house. Her friend's Catholic upbringing did not allow her to date outside the faith. This is true in the 1940s. They married others. Over the many years since college days, Elise and Irv stayed in touch. And now in 2011, the phone rang, and Elise's life was about to change. So the big jovial New Yorker, Irv Bonnell, came the next week. And he stayed. They renewed their love. He cooked for her. They went to his ranch in California, and then to Paris in April, and then Italy. Cards came from Austin, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, to his family and friends in the United States. And then in 2016, yes, a letter came from them signed Mr. and Mrs. Irv Bonnell. The lovers married after being in love for 16 years. So I want to say, if you're interested in reading my book, I'd love to have you sign up, and I will send it to you. I've had a problem with the printer and the cover that I've chosen. I also have a Zoom class. I would love all of my new friends to join me for Zoom. So leave your email, if you will, with me. And I also am a memoirist. And as Fred has said, I've written many stories, life stories. As my Carrie Cottage friends know, they've heard me talk about that. Victoria knows this, and some of the others, certainly Roseanne and Charlie here and all that as well. So please become my friend. I'm your friend, and I'm thrilled to see everybody here. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Marjorie and Lisa. I can't think of a better combination of authors for this. Wonderful, wonderful. Just a couple closing announcements. Just looking ahead, tomorrow at 12:15, the prose writer of the week, Hillary Plum, will be speaking. Not sure the exact title of her speech, but she's been teaching a course on beginnings, both how to get yourself writing, but also once you're writing, how do you open your piece of writing. Also want to invite you back next week when we have two poets, Sandy Burns, who's right here at the moment, and Ann Wallace will be speaking. You might have been here because of friendship, but I invite you to come back, even if you don't know the authors, for, I guess, literature's sake. A video of this will be available on our YouTube channel, Friends of the Chautauqua Writer Center channel. I do apologize though, we had technical difficulties. I don't think it's until about 10 minutes in that we got audio and video and Wi-Fi and everything working together. But at least if you want something that might stir a memory, that's not recapture the whole speech. Once again, thank you for coming, and thank you, Lisa and Marjorie. Let's give them up.
And Lisa and me together. Don't sit down yet. Are you finished? Yeah, who knows how to do this? I don't know. You come right on.